Wow, unbelievable. And I honestly, I'm in a state of shock, and I shouldn't be, but I am because they actually admitted it. Uh, the big news today for most people is probably going to be the Russian oil ban, but I talked about that yesterday, so I don't think I need to rehash that much. Although there are some new developments, like it's finalized now. But the big news today, Victoria Nuland admitted that there are bioweapons labs in Ukraine, almost certainly, well, I mean, certainly funded by the U.S. government, because the U.S. has been funding the Ukrainian military and all their weapons and everything for years. I mean, we know that. We do that very openly. But today, Marco Rubio, during a hearing on the Russo-Ukrainian war currently ongoing, asked Victoria Nuland, who is essentially the American viceroy of Ukraine, or our governor general, however you want to call it, same thing. The woman in charge for America, you want to ask, you want to know what America's doing in Ukraine, you ask her. He asked her, does Ukraine have any biological or chemical weapons? And she went into talking about these labs and saying, well, Ukraine has some biological research labs. It's like, well, he asked you about weapons, so you're saying that these research labs research biological weapons? Is that what you're saying? Because that's frightening, if that's the case. I mean, here I thought, I hadn't been talking about this because Russia's been talking about this. Russia's been saying Ukraine has, essentially, there are a bunch of different Wuhan Institute of Virologies spread around their country, that they've captured them, and that essentially America was planning to release a bioweapon. And Putin's patting himself on the back, essentially saying he stopped the next pandemic. And, I thought this was a funny story, but I said it's a little too perfect. He's saying, it's literally the Wuhan lab leak story. But, but again, in Ukraine. But then Marco Rubio just comes out and asks her about it. And she admits it. Like, I didn't expect this to become mainstream news at all. I didn't expect this to ever be acknowledged. Why would they even acknowledge what Putin's been saying about this? I mean, it hasn't been making its way into American media. Russian media has been talking about it, but the West has been almost entirely cut off from Russian media, and frankly, almost nobody watched or listened to Russian media to begin with. Like the other day, I tried to go online and find Sputnik, the radio station. You can't find a live stream of Sputnik. I guess they put out the podcasts. But if you wanted to just listen to Sputnik, you have to go like on terrestrial radio, on FM or AM, whatever they're on, and turn on Sputnik. And I think they're only in Washington, D.C. And RT, I mean, who knows what channel RT was on their, or is on their cable system? I certainly don't know what channel RT is. I know you can find the live stream on YouTube, although they shut down RT America, what am I saying? So it's gone from here. So even if Russian media was talking about it, pretty much all you have left is Russian language media. And the Americans could have just pretended that none of this happened, and that none of this was real, that it was all a crazy conspiracy theory. And honestly, I was leaning in that direction, because during a war, you get propaganda from both sides, and I just have to weigh when I hear something. Okay, this side is making a claim. Does that claim sound super plausible? Is it something that I can, kind of take their word for? And in that case, I heard Putin, or not Putin specifically, but the Russians and Russian pro-Russian media was saying, oh yeah, the Russians captured these biological weapons labs, and the Ukrainians we're planning on doing a biological weapons attack. And I thought, that's a little far-fetched. That to me sounded like weapons of mass destruction. It sounded like what they accused Saddam Hussein of. Saddam has weapons of mass destruction, and we got to stop him. That's like, okay. I thought Vlad was just trolling everybody by basically turning this, into Iraq. Making the same justification so that, people say, oh, well, this was an illegal war. Vlad's a war criminal. He could just point to George W. Bush and say, oh, I'm a war criminal like that guy? But then Victoria Nuland, Robert Kagan's wife, the viceroy of Ukraine, just comes out and says it. I mean, it's shocking. And Rubio had to intervene because she was being too candid. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Rubio asked her a very candid question. Does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons? She said, oh, yeah, we got these labs there. And they're worried about the Russians capturing them because of what materials they might find there. They're worried about them capturing their research material. Oh, what research material? You mean their biological weapons? And so Rubio had to get her off that topic because it's like, whoa, 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 you're saying way too much. You're just admitting everything. And so he said, now, Vicky, or Toria, sorry, they call her Toria. If there is a chemical or biological weapons attack at any point during this war, are you 100% confident, again, before anything has happened, are you 100% confident, are you clairvoyant, that this will be perpetrated by the Russians? And she said, oh yeah, 100%, totally. I mean, that's totally what the Russians would do. It's like, wait. So the question is, does Ukraine have chemical or biological weapons? The answer is yes, according to Victoria Nuland. Now, if anybody uses chemical or biological weapons, it's definitely not Ukraine, right? Oh yeah. Well, what do they have the weapons for? Why would they have chemical or biological weapons? Why would they have that program? Why would they have, if they're not going to use them in a war when they're going to be defeated and overtaken by the Russians, when would they use these chemical or biological weapons? And so, I mean, I don't know what else to say other than this is a pathetic attempt by Rubio, and I think it's really backfired, to try and, front run something that probably is going to be an obvious false flag. And he's trying to say out ahead of time, oh, now if you see this false flag happen, it's definitely not a false flag. I guess he's trying to say that if there's a chemical attack, it's going to be a false flag staged by the Russians and then blamed on the Ukrainians. Because the Russians are going to say, hey, we found these chemical weapons in Ukraine. And then in Ukraine, there will be a chemical weapons attack. And then the Russians will say, see, look, they used those chemical weapons that we found. And I guess Rubio's trying to say, well, actually, it will be the Russians that will have used them. And it's like, well, wait, but you're saying that these are chemical weapons that theoretically Russia's going to get by they're going to capture in Ukraine, these weapons, and then use them on people. I don't know. It sounds kind of far-fetched to me, especially when the Russians are winning. Why do they need to gas people? It sounds an awful lot like what Bashar al-Assad supposedly did once he started winning the Syrian war. The way that in Duma, in, what was that? Was that 2015 or 2017 or something? I mean, it was so long ago now, I can't really remember. Where there was supposedly that gas attack that we later found out was total bullshit. Assad's winning the war. Obama put out this red line. Now, Assad, you can do whatever you want to fight this war, but don't use chemical weapons. Don't gas your own people. And then all of a sudden, Assad gasses his own people? It seems kind of fishy. It seems to me that the incentive here would be for the side that is losing to stage a chemical weapons attack, then blame it on the other side in order to spur foreign intervention. Sounds to me like we're going to see something like we saw in Duma, where in that case it was the Syrian rebels, also known as al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, all those groups. I can't remember which one specifically, which jihadist splinter group staged the Duma attack, but they then can blame it on Assad and say, oh my gosh, if only we had, American intervention, we wouldn't be gassed. And they're going to play the same game, apparently, based on what Marco Rubio is saying. I'm not basing it all on what Russia's saying now. I didn't think Russia was very credible on this at all. I thought that Russia was frankly just trolling. But now Rubio is basically acting like, hey, most likely thing here, Ukrainians, they're losing, and in a last-ditch effort, they're going to either stage a gas attack or, perpetrate a real gas attack on their own people, which I sincerely hope does not happen, and then blame it on the Russians and say, see, this is why America needs to intervene. Russia is gassing people. This is terrible. This is, monstrous. It's just like Hitler. And then voila, we start World War III or something like that. So I would say that the odds of some kind of chemical false flag sort of deal just got turned up to like 95%. Well, I shouldn't say it's that high, but like 75%. It's like, why are they talking about this? Why would you brought this up unless this is something that actually might happen? Because I think the point here of what Rubio was trying to accomplish is front run this story, get out in front of it and say, this is Russia's fault. And he did a really bad job at it. He and Victoria Nuland really botched this, and they do not sound very believable at all. They took me, someone who was very, very skeptical of what Russia was saying about chemical weapons and biological weapons in Ukraine, and just made Russia seem a whole lot more credible. And they made themselves seem incredible, or uncredible, non-credible, whatever you want to say it. But then again, when you look at Marco Rubio's Twitter feed and it has anything to do with international relations, it's 100% propaganda. I mean, you can disregard almost everything the man says. He's worse than Lindsey Graham in that a lot of people seem to take Marco Rubio's Twitter feed seriously. Whereas at least with Lindsey Graham, when Lindsey Graham says, I think we should assassinate Putin, people just instinctively blow up at him because they know that he's a dumbass. So, yeah, go watch the clip. I'm going to link to it, or I'll try to, in the description. It speaks for itself. And I guess what I should do next is go and try and find whatever these documents that the Russians put out. I don't know if they're in English, but I keep hearing about it, all this stuff that the Russians supposedly found. I didn't really believe it, but now I'm like, you know what? Those Russians must be onto something. And I don't know anybody who could watch this, watch what happened today and not come away with that. I mean, again, just a total failure, total botching on the part of Nuland and Rubio. If they had just kept their mouths shut, it would have been not as easy to be totally skeptical of some, Russia's gassing people story that comes out in the future. Now, I would have been skeptical because I'm like, wow, they gas people just like Assad did? You think we're going to fall for that one again? But most Americans have no idea that Assad didn't gas his own people. Or I should say, they have no idea that the evidence that Assad gassed his own people is totally fabricated. I don't want to say affirmatively that Assad has never used chemical weapons anywhere at any time, but the Duma attack was a total fiction. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.